I want to start off with something really cool. If you have to guess this pharaoh in the center, what?
No, she was talking to me.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask Elinor and Renana. This pharaoh in the center, is this a king or a queen?
King.
And the one to the right with the funky hat?
I think a queen.
Right. She is a queen. She is one of the two most famous queens in ancient Egypt. There's two famous queens. One of them, her name is Nefertiti. Nefer, the word Nefer means beautiful in ancient Egyptian. So if you hear a name of an Egyptian that has Nefer in it, you know that it's a name of a woman. It's a nice name. Okay, so Nefertiti is a very famous queen. And this is the other one. And this is actually a queen who dressed up like a king, which is a very interesting story because she wanted the Egyptians to look at her like a king. And so she called herself Pharaoh. And her name was Hatshepsut, like Hatshepsut. And or Hatshepsut was a queen who became like a king. And she was a very, very powerful pharaoh. For 15 years, she made Egypt very strong. So she's very, very famous. Okay, but she wanted you to think that she's a king. So you thought that this is a king, and that's why. Okay, and then there's this one. What are you looking at? That's just for fun. Okay, so we're going to be going to visit the pyramids of Egypt, and we're going to be going to some museums to see mummies and pharaohs and all kinds of stuff. But first, I want to just start with a little quiz. Okay, so here's the pyramids. Have you ever been to Egypt?
No, we can't go on a planes and stuff like that because I have allergies and I can't. And if somebody opens like.
But you can go by camel.
I don't really like waiting a long time.
Maybe you can drive there one day. Yeah, but hopefully we'll be able to because they're opening up a new museum in Egypt, which is like a 20-minute drive from the pyramids. It's going to be one of the nicest museums in the world. They're opening up a new museum with a big glass pyramid ceiling in Cairo. So it's really, hopefully you'll be able to go. Maybe you'll manage to go without any allergy issues. I don't know, to drive there one day. Maybe we'll make a train, but you should know they're opening up a museum. So these are pyramids. Now, I'm going to start off with a quiz, and I'm going to give you a few seconds to pick your answer. I'm going to ask you two questions. What are the pyramids for? So answer one is they're for storage, for storing things. Two is it's a palace. Three, it's for burying someone inside it. It's a burial. And four, it's for putting in treasure. One, storage. Two, palace. Three, burial. Four, treasure.
Some pyramids were used for burying people. Mm-hmm. Some were used to store stuff in, and mm-hmm. some were used to store treasures.
Oh, well, you're very close because the answer is you're right. You're right, Renana. It's a little bit of all of that. The main reason, which is good.
I nearly know. Okay. This is Renana.
Okay, Renana. You switched places. Okay, Elinor. Elinor, so that was good. The real answer is burial. But because the Egyptians buried things like treasure with their dead, so they also put treasures there. But They put them there because it's a burial. Right? I
know a lot of stuff about Egypt because my grandmother came from Egypt.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. I actually knew a kid from New York, from New Jersey, whose family is Diane, who's from Egypt.
Diane?
Diane, yeah.
That's exactly our family name.
I know. Maybe you guys are related. Maybe you guys are related. I don't remember right now, his parents' names, but I met him. He was I gave him a ride, I think. But he's a family friends, he's friends with my family's friends. So yeah, it could be. So you know a lot about ancient Egypt. This is going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so this is a quiz that many people don't know the answer to, is who built the pyramids? Is it Egyptians, slaves, Israel, or Pharaoh?
Some, like when that took place, then they made Israel do it. But before all that vadut, then it was the servants.
All right. Okay. How about Renana? Have you know about the pyramids also?
They're triangle.
Yeah, they see they're very big. The biggest triangles in the world.
The biggest triangle. You would need 1,000 pieces of paper.
A lot more than 1,000, maybe 1,000,000.
I want to see.
Well, let's see the answer. The answer is Egyptians. Egyptians built the pyramids, and they built them 1,000 years before Israel came to Egypt. So we didn't build the pyramids, but what we did build is cities, which were for storing grain and stuff. That we did, but it's in the different part of Egypt. So it's important to know where this took place. So we're going to start. Now we're going to go into Egypt, into Mitzrayim. Okay, hang on. Give me just a second. Okay, here we are in Egypt. All right, you see where we are? You recognize? Yeah, you see Eretz Israel?
Yeah.
Here? All right. Now, so here's Yam Suf where we crossed over. Now let's see a few fun things about this. I'm going to ask you because you know a lot about Egypt. I don't want to tell you something you already know. Do you know about the two lands of Egypt? Well, let's make it easier. I'm going to show you how Egypt looks at the world. Look carefully. Boom. Is that what I did? Now, why did I do that? Why did I flip the earth? This is weird, right? Isn't it upside down? What, Renana, what?
I'm upside down.
No, you're not upside down. We're all upside down. This is the way the Egyptians looked at the world. We think it's upside down, but they're like, no, you're upside down. Because the Nile flows into the Yam HaTichon, into the sea. It starts all the way up. We're really looking south, but we're going to call that up. The Egyptians said, look, that's up, and the water comes flowing down, 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 down. So that's up, and this is down. Does that make sense? If you live in Egypt, you follow the Nile. The Nile is flowing down into the ocean. So they looked at the world as up and down. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Look at that. So then the Nile comes from Central Africa all the way here, from the monsoons, from the heavy rains in Ethiopia. And they didn't know where it came from. They just saw, oh, look, the Nile's coming and it's coming and we have water and this is great. So they said that's where Egypt starts. It starts with the Nile.
You know, we have a lot of history with people like all over the world. Like we have babysitters that are from Ethiopia.
Wow. So in Ethiopia, I wonder what they think about the Nile in Ethiopia because it's very different. It's only parts of Ethiopia that are next to the Nile. So ask them. It's called the White Nile and the Blue Nile. Ask them if they know anything about it. That would be very interesting.
You forgot one country. It's called Gagaland.
What?
You forgot one country. It's called Gagaland.
Okay. So let me show you something really neat about Egypt. Egypt used to be two different countries. It was called Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. What's up? What we call south. You see this squiggly line?
Mm-hmm.
This is, you know what this line is, right?
The Nile, yeah.
Very good, the Nile. And they lived only in the green area. They called it the Black Land. You know why they call it the Black Land?
Because it looks black.
Well, it's kind of green, but it's because when the Nile would come from Africa, it would bring with it a lot of minerals that are dark, and it would spread the minerals. It would flood the banks of the Nile, and it would sit there, and all this black, muddy sand would sit there. And then when the water would go back down, the farmers would have all of this beautiful black land that they can plant vegetables in. And they made a lot of grain, a lot of bread, a lot of vegetables. So that was the good thing, the black land, and everything around it is desert. They called it red land. And that was like a place that nobody can live there because they didn't have water. It's not like today where you can turn on the faucet. They didn't have sinks. So you have to live near the water. So it's a very thin country. Everybody lived only along the green, or what they call the black land. So this is all called Upper Egypt. And then this part over here is called Lower Egypt, or the Delta. It's called the Nile Delta. Did you ever hear that before?
No.
It looks, if you look at the shape of the green, it looks like a letter, right? It looks like the letter. Here, let me turn it around. It looks like the Greek letter delta, or kind of like the letter D, a little bit. You see that? So they just called it the Nile Delta. But this area is called Lower Egypt. And this is going to be very important for us. But where are the pyramids?
I see more green.
What?
I see more green.
Yeah, of course. And this is all fields where they would grow things. Now, where are the pyramids? In Upper Egypt or Lower Egypt? What do you guess?
Upper Egypt.
Okay. You want to where you say lower?
No, Upper Egypt.
They're right in the middle over here. They're right in the middle between Upper and Lower Egypt.
Right. So we're both right.
Exactly. And that's why they're there, because they want to connect Upper and Lower Egypt. Now, what made the first Pharaoh the first Pharaoh? How did he become the Pharaoh? What did he do? So I want to take you back to Egypt to show you. We're going to just turn Egypt upside down.
Closer? No, we can.
Very nice, Djoser. Djoser was the one who had the pyramids built. One of them. There was a few. There's also Khufu, right? But that was a long time after the first Pharaoh. Hundreds of years after the first Pharaoh.
Can you make it go in? No, no.
What?
No, she was telling to me.
No, but you can ask questions. That's why we're here. So
no, she wasn't asking a question. I was. She was asking you if you could go in more.
I will very soon, but this is a picture. This isn't the map. I'm showing you a painting here. I made this painting of Pharaoh's dream, where he dreams of wheat eating other wheat. But this is a little picture of Pharaoh, and I want you to look at his crown. You see what he's wearing? It's called. You know what that crown is called?
No.
It's called Nemes. Nemes. That's what it's called. Don't confuse that with Menes, because Menes was the first Pharaoh. Now, what did Pharaoh do that made him Pharaoh? This is the really cool part. And if you know mythology, it's gonna become even more interesting soon. Okay? So we're gonna get to mythology soon. Okay? So before the first Pharaoh, Egypt was two different countries, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. And each one had a different king, and they would fight each other. And each king had a different kind of crown. There was this white crown, which is the crown of Upper Egypt. And if you ever see it, you'll know it's upper because it's very high up. And then there is the red crown of Lower Egypt, which is lower down. Now look at the Menes crown of Nemes crown of Pharaoh. That's a Lower Egypt crown. The first Pharaoh, the first king of Egypt, connected both countries into one country and made the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. And this is the crown that the first Pharaoh would wear, and all the pharaohs after him had to keep both lands of Egypt, the two lands, connected. So one of the names of Pharaoh was the king of two lands, because it was always two different lands that he brought together. That's a really cool idea. So now I'm going to take you into the museum. We're going to go back to the map, but I'm taking you to a different part of the world. Okay, I'm taking you to London. Boom. Have you ever been to London?
No.
Well, are we excited or what? This is the British Museum in London. So in the British Museum.
There. My mom's been there.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm sure she's seen the Rosetta Stone and some of the famous pharaohs. If she's been in the British Museum, they have some of the most famous famous pharaohs in the world, all kinds of really cool stuff. So let's jump into the museum, shall we? Where do we go? Let's, you know how to use the Google Street View, little yellow guy?
Yeah,
Take him, and let's see if I remember where to go. Boom. Right here. Wow, that was cool. I landed exactly in the spot in the Egyptian galleries on the ground floor. We're going to see all kinds of fun stuff here. First of all, is this a pharaoh of Upper or Lower Egypt?
Lower.
How did you know?
Because his crown is lower. Very
good. Now suddenly it makes sense when you look at pharaohs. Wow, these are lions. This is by the way pharaohs would write their name. You know how they would write their name? This is a very fun story. Have you ever heard of the Rosetta Stone?
No.
I'm going to show it to you soon. The Rosetta Stone is very important, but the reason we know how to read hieroglyphics is because of the Rosetta Stone.
I remember it now. I like reading, so I just read through all the books I can find.
Wow.
And I found it in one of my father's books.
So you want to see it?
It was written in a couple of languages, right?
Very good. You want to see it?
Okay.
All right, we're going to see it in just a few minutes. But before we see it, we need to know what's going on here. So I'm sure you've heard the name Ramesses the Great, right? Ramses the Great. He's one of the most famous pharaohs. And he built this palace in Abydos, which is one of the cities of Egypt. And this is part of his wall. If you look carefully, you see the pharaoh sitting here. You see his knees, but it kind of broke. It didn't really last. But this is a list of all the pharaohs that came before him, because he wanted to show that he's the next pharaoh. So look at these yellow little circles that have hieroglyphics inside them. What do they mean? They want to guess what's inside the circle?
Here, words.
But the words, so this has to do with the Rosetta Stone. We're going to find out soon. This is the name of the king. You can have a lot of hieroglyphics and you would just read it blah, 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 blah. But if it's inside a circle, it's Pharaoh something, the name of the Pharaoh. Okay? That's the first thing you remember. When you see the letters inside the circle, the cartouche, it's called, the circle, that means that this is the name, you read this as the name of a Pharaoh, as opposed to just reading words. Now look at these pictures on top. A few minutes ago, this didn't mean anything to us, but now we see this is the red crown of Lower Egypt. So this Pharaoh, whose name is written here, was born in Lower Egypt. But this Pharaoh, whose name is listed here, see this guy? He was born in Upper Egypt. You can't be born in two places. You can only be born in Upper or Lower. You can be king over both, but you can only be born in one. So they showed where the king came from, and they have his names. So that's this. Now we look at hieroglyphics and we know a little bit more. Okay. Now let's look at some more kings and we're going to see, can we tell where they are from? Let's look at a few more kings. I like to call these the Three Musketeers. They all look very grumpy and one of them has huge ears. Okay. So these guys, of course, are from Lower Egypt. Let's look at some other ones. Here's a broken one that didn't really last so well. We just walked through him. It's a little bit harder to see. Okay, this guy is from?
Upper Egypt.
Good. Let's look at another one. I don't want to get too dizzy, but look at this guy right over here. See? Upper Egypt. They didn't all wear the same crown. They wore different kinds of crowns, right?
He kind of looks like a guardian.
He does, and they actually would put him like a guardian next to a palace or next to a temple to show people that the Pharaoh is guarding this place. So that's very, very good, right? They were used as guardians. Now look at this crown. You see this?
Yeah.
This is remember what it's called?
Upper Egypt.
The double crown. This is Upper and Lower Egypt together. You see that? It looks really funny. I don't think it was that heavy. It was probably made from cloth. But there's the cobra snake as well. And that's the symbol of the king. And this is Pharaoh. This is a very, very famous Pharaoh. Have you heard of King Tut? King Tutankhamun? I'm sure you'll recognize him if you saw him. I'm sure you'd recognize him if you saw him. I'll show you a picture of him, and then you'll tell me if you know if you've seen it or not. Okay? Let me show you. Hang on. Have you ever seen this before?
Yeah, I saw it in one of my books.
Very good. This is one of the most famous pharaohs because we found him. We found the burial, which thieves weren't able to find. A lot of them were stolen and robbed, so we don't really know what's in them because people stole them. But this was hidden so well that nobody found it until about 100 years ago when a guy named Carter was able to find it. So this is King Tut. And the pharaoh that we just looked at, Amenhotep, is his great-grandfather. So he's a very important pharaoh. And he made a big statue of himself. And so big that if you stand next to him, look at the size of that arm. It's a huge, huge arm. I actually have a picture. I have a picture where I'm standing right next to it. I have to look for it. But it's really big because the statue is much larger than life size. He has an outstretched arm showing that he's strong and he's powerful. So we're getting to know him a little bit more. You know, where we hear about an outstretched arm, a strong hand, when we are told, when Hashem tells us, God tells us, I'm going to take you out of Egypt with a strong hand. Now, everybody in Egypt knows Pharaoh's strong hand. So when you hear that, it makes sense, right? It's like, oh, okay, not Pharaoh's strong hand, the God of Israel, Hashem's strong hand. So that's really nice, right? When you see that strong hand. Do you know who these guys are from mythology? This is first of all, what animal? We may talk a little bit about animals and mythology. What animal is it? Here, let's move closer. Can you tell what animal it is? Here, let me zoom. Should I zoom up here?
Yeah. Horse? It makes sense when you would sing Chad Gadya.
Well, this is very early on in Chad Gadya. This is, if you ignore the crown, you just look at the ears and the nose. Can you tell what animal it looks like?
Lion.
Right. This is a lioness. This is the lioness. This is the Egyptian goddess of war. Her name is Sekhmet. Sekhmet. But in Egyptian mythology, she ends up becoming a cow, which is very funny. But that's Egyptian mythology is a lot of fun. Okay, here's another guy, a pharaoh with the double crown. We just walked through a wall, so he vanished. There, Upper and Lower Egypt. You see, you even see the paint, right? Upper and Lower Egypt. And I want to show you the Rosetta Stone, and then we'll see another pharaoh, this big guy at the end. So here, Elinor and Renana, you are looking at the Rosetta Stone. Look at that. Now, how many different languages do you see on it?
3.
3. Can you tell exactly where they begin and where they end? Is it clear?
No.
So let's look carefully. On the top, this is hieroglyphics. See that? And in the middle is another Egyptian writing, which is called hieratic. It's like handwritten, but it's also ancient Egyptian. And then below here, in really, really tiny words, which is hard to see, is, you know what language is the second language?
Greek.
Very good. Ancient Greek. This is from when the Greeks were living in Egypt and the Greeks were acting like pharaohs. Now, this is the key to learning how to read hieroglyphics. But how did they figure it out?
Because there was somebody in their little group who knew Greek, and then they guessed that probably the Greek is what the ancient...
It says the same thing, but in Egyptian, right? But still, how do you start figuring out where a word begins and where a word ends? It's complicated. because you don't know how the language even sounds.
Well, yeah.
But I gave you a clue. Now we're going to see it up close. There's a picture here that explains it. The key to Egyptian hieroglyphics, and that is the name of the king, which is inside the circle. Now, Egyptians would write right to left or left to right or top to bottom. So that's another confusing thing. How do you even know what direction to read it in? That's confusing. So there's a lot of confusing things when you read another language. Now, the key to unlocking Egyptian hieroglyphics is the circle with the name of the king. Because 150 years ago, this guy whose name was Champollion made a guess. He said, I wonder if these things are the name of the king. I don't know how to read Egyptian, but I know how to read Greek. So he went and he said, let's find the name of the king in Greek. And that was Ptolemy V, one of the Greek pharaohs. And he compared it and he was able to read it. And that's how he was able to figure it out. He was able to start comparing using the names of kings. Is Renana all right?
Yeah. She's being very silly. She likes being silly.
Okay, that's fine. That's what's fun. So this is the Rosetta Stone. Do you want to guess why it's called the Rosetta Stone?
No.
It was found in Rosetta.
And it's a stone.
It's a stone. Very good. It's actually in Arabic. It's called Rashid. Rosetta is Rashid. It's the name of a city. And the cool thing is who found it. I'm sure you've heard the name of Napoleon. Have you heard of?
Yeah, Napoleon.
Right, Napoleon Bonaparte. So it's his soldiers who found it. So that's cool. Let me show you another guy right here. And this is Ramses the Great. Ramses the Great. And what crown is he wearing? Let's move back. It's hard to see. It's because it's broken.
Lower.
Lower and upper. Look on top of his head. You see it's a little bit broken, but you also see the beginning. So he's wearing the double crown. This was one of the most powerful pharaohs in all of the history of Egypt. In 3,000 years of Egypt, he lived the longest. He was ruler for 67 years, and he was about 2 meters tall. You know how we know that?
How?
We found his mummy. We found his mummy. He was 2 meters tall. Almost, no, not like 1.90 meters. He was very, very tall, and he lived a long life. So he's a very important pharaoh. Now let's see something a little bit cooler. So let's walk through the wall, and what we're going to do some mythology in animals, right? What animal are we looking at over here?
A goat.
Kind of. It's a sheep, a ram, right?
Yeah.
That's not his beard. That's a little pharaoh underneath him.
Oh.
But now, what do sheep have to do with Egypt? Do you remember any stories?
Yeah. The cattle was Egypt. God, one of Egypt's many gods.
Mm-hmm. Very good. One of Egypt's many gods. So we made the Korban Pesach. We had our own sheep, and Egypt were very angry about that because it's one of their gods, the sheep god, who's known as Amun-Ra. Not Amun-Ba, but Amun-Ra. Do you know the name Ra? Which god is Ra?
No.
He is the sun god, the sun god of ancient Egypt. Right? All right, let's look at another animal which the Egyptians found really fascinating. Where did it go? We just walked through a wall. Here we go. See if you can tell what animal is this.
Spider?
A
bug?
A bug? What kind of bug?
Earbug? A ladybug.
Not a ladybug. Let's move in front of it. This is called a dung beetle or a scarab. A dung beetle. These beetles are very, very weird beetles, and I want to show you how funny the Egyptians were about this. these beetles, the mother beetle, would lay her eggs inside a ball of poop, horse poop, which is called dung. So she's called a dung beetle. But the way she does it, she stands on her front legs, and with her back legs, she pushes the ball of poop all over it, just pushes it around like a marble and kicks it around. So the Egyptians said, that's kind of like the sun moving around. So maybe the sun gets moved around by this invisible beetle god. So, so they thought that the beetle is very, very holy. So they loved beetles, and they put pictures of beetles on mummies and walls, and they made jewelry out of beetles, rings out of beetles. They loved beetles. That's the Egyptians. They're kind of funny. So we're going to see some mummies. I'm wondering if you'll see any beetles on the wall. Okay. Oh, look, hieroglyphics. All right. So we're going to now jump to another part of the museum. Let me think. Let me ask you, do you want to go to Chicago or to a different room in London? Pick one first.
Gaga.
Where's that?
It's a top room.
Oh, you want to go to Chicago? Is that what you said?
Yeah, okay.
All right, we can come back here anyway. So let's go to Chicago. Boom. I just jumped to another museum in Chicago, and we're looking at a statue of another pharaoh, and look at his crown.
It's both.
Right, it's the double crown, which means that he was a very, very good pharaoh. He was able to keep the kingdom together. Okay, very important. Now I want to show you some really cool stuff that was dug up inside the tombs. Okay, so here's some mummies. We're going to see lots of mummies. You ever seen mummies up close? No, look down. No. So let's look up close.
Unless it's a balloon.
You what?
My grandmother and grandfather have a balloon mummy.
A balloon mummy.
They like blow up and it looks like a mummy.
Cool. Really neat. So look at that. These are mummies. This is the casket that it was put inside. And look, I want you to see, let me see if we can get close and look at the colors of the mummy, because it's really neat. I'm going to try to move next to it. Here. Look at how they painted it with all these different images and birds and Egyptian gods. And they loved making these jackals, the black dogs on the feet. We're going to see the dogs soon up close. But can you see the black head of a dog here?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you know Egyptian mythology a little bit?
Not really.
Okay. So the Egyptian. What?
They do newspapers of Egyptians.
I don't understand. Can you translate for me, Alina? What?
She said they make newspapers of Egyptians.
Ah. Okay. All right. Let's see some really cool things.
She said that because it looks like it's their how do you call it? It looks like they wrote on it something.
They did. They did write on it. They wrote and they made pictures.
It's like they made the mummy into a newspaper.
Yeah, it's a newspaper. Or it's actually an old paper, not a newspaper. But you know, Egyptians invented paper, so that's awesome.
Paper like a soccer.
What do you see? What do you see here?
Little figures doing something.
Very good. Little figures doing stuff. Now, these figures are about 4,000 years old. They were found inside the caves. They still stayed with their paint. They're made from wood. They look like little toys. Right? Now, what exactly are they doing? Can you see boats?
Yeah.
So they're either floating boats, or they're sitting here and preparing food, or preparing bread, or preparing beer, or making grain or meat. So they're doing stuff.
It looks like they're making mummies and putting them inside the pyramid.
Oh, it does look like that, but that's not what they're doing. I'll show you, I'll show you a closer picture of them. Let me see. Hold on. Here we go. These are closer pictures of them. Now, can you see clearly what they're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
they're feeding their cattle.
They're cattle, or in the middle, I'm going to show you the pictures of the people inside here in the next slide. Okay, so first of all, what are these people doing?
They're making food.
What food exactly are they making?
I don't know, mashed potatoes?
So I'm going to give you a clue. The guy on the right is sitting next to an oven.
Bread?
Good. They're making bread. Do you see the guy kneading the dough with the flour?
Yeah.
Good. So what are the women doing next to him?
Making the dough?
Almost. He's making the dough. They're making something else. The question is, what are they holding in their hand? That's the question. Let me give you a clue. They're standing like this. They're holding something in their hand and they're going back and forth, moving back and forth. What are they doing?
Washing dishes?
No, not yet. Well, they're making something that you need to make the dough.
Flour.
They're making flour. What do you call making flour? How do you make it?
You pick
Chita,
wheat.
Right? Chita, wheat, right? And what do you do to it?
And grind it.
You grind it. They are grinding wheat. What is the thing they're holding in their hand?
Wood.
A grind. Well, it's everything here is made from wood, but it's pretending to be a grindstone. The way you would grind is with one stone on another stone. You would grind the wheat, and they're making flour.
Why do they both look like the same people?
Yeah, you did. People did things very differently once. And you know what's really neat is that they made bread every single day. They would make new bread and they would grind it every single day. And in English, we call working every day the daily grind. We still use that phrase, the daily grind, even though people don't use grindstones anymore and we don't grind our bread every day. We go and buy it in the bakery or the supermarket, which is not as good. The bakery is always better. And of course, if Ima makes bread, it's even better, but I don't think she does that every day.
No, only for Shabbat.
Right. So imagine having fresh bread every single day. Right? Now let's show you another thing. What are these people doing?
It looks like they're...
Let's start with the one on the right. What does it look like he's doing?
Cutting bread.
Okay, he looks like he's cutting bread. Now there's somebody with a stick there. They're doing something. It's not exactly clear what he's doing. I mean, to me, it looks like he's playing with potatoes. I don't know. But but the guy on the right is pouring something into something else. You see that?
Water, I think. Yeah.
These people are making Egypt's favorite drink, beer. They're making beer.
My grandfather really liked beer.
You see, nothing's changed in thousands of years. People love beer. Especially people from Egypt, because remember I said that the Egyptians built the pyramids? How do you think the Pharaoh paid them?
With beer?
That's right. With bread and with beer. Imagine what you can get people to do with bread and beer. Okay.
He certainly can make my grandfather do a lot for his beer.
So no, people were actually paid with bread and beer. And here's what's really cool. Do you know who invented bread? What?
She said that we just have some dirty stuff on the computer. So it looks like the guy on the right has a nosebleed.
Oh, that's terrible. But you know what's really cool? Who invented bread?
Flour?
Mm-hmm. Who? I can't hear you.
Flour.
Flour invented bread. You know what's really cool? Egypt invented bread. Egyptians invented bread. Isn't that cool? Because, you know,
Yeah.
when Avraham and Yitzchak and Sarah and Rivka, when they were all traveling, they didn't make bread. They made matzah. They made, like, have you ever made pita before?
Not really, but I've made matzah. It wasn't really matzah, but it was close. It wasn't kosher to Pesach. It was chametz,
but you know, like the way my cousins, like the Yemenites, Temani, make matzah is like pita. It looks like pita, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that right. How do you make it?
With water and flour.
And what do you bake it on?
My father prays Temani, and he does like minhagei Teman.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw pictures of them like baking it on like it's called fire, but not really.
It's called a tabun. Tabun.
Yeah.
On a tabun, right?
Yeah, a tabun. You put it on top of the fire and then.
Now, here's what's really neat. When you are traveling, like Avraham and Sarah were always moving around, so you can carry a tabun. It's easy, but you can't really carry an oven. So you can't really make bread. Everyone makes pita if you're traveling, but Egypt doesn't need to travel because they have the Nile, and they don't need to follow where the rain is. They just stay in the same place. So we can let the dough rise and we can make bread. That's how Egypt invented bread. And on Pesach, Hashem tells us, I don't want you to eat Egypt food, which is bread and beer. I want you to remember that we used to be people who travel because we're about to leave and we're about to move. And when you're traveling, you make matzah. You make matzah. So it's remembering where we come from. What?
We're also gonna move soon. Like hopefully at the summer, and that close. Like here's Pesach and here's the summer.
Yeah.
So it's like close to Pesach.
So you're moving very well. Nice, very nice. Where are you moving to?
We have no idea. Okay. I know. I know. The sky.
Yeah. The sky. You know, they're moving to Mars soon. You might be able to buy a house on Mars. But I'm moving after Pesach also. Okay. Now let's move on. I think we have a few more minutes. So let's go to we can do two things. Which one do you want to do first? The pyramids or mythology? Okay, mythology it is. So look at these. Yeah, and then we'll finish with the pyramids. Look at this. Do you see the little beetle? Right here? See, they loved beetles. And up here is a piece of yellow paper. It's called papyrus, which is made from the Egyptians made it. But I want to show you the picture on it. Okay, let's go back to the British Museum. We're going to go back to London, but we've gone up to the 3rd floor. Want to see some really, really creepy stuff from the Egyptians? Not scary, just creepy. Okay, so look at these guys. Mummies, lots of mummies. But if you want to see what was inside the mummies, there's also pictures of that.
There are lots of mummies in the same cage.
Mm-hmm. In the museum. Look, this is a mummy that they opened up. Ooh, yeah, it's not so nice to look at. Okay. And then you see these bones, these skulls?
But it does look like it's like it's kind of alive.
Right, but it's not really alive, but they were able to save it. Right, but you're not really supposed to open up the mummies. It ruins them. So today you just put them in a scanner. and you 3D scan them. Okay, so here's mummies. Look how they buried the mummy. You see that there's a wooden case on the outside, and the mummy is wrapped in the inside in linens. He's wrapped up, bundled up. And we're not supposed to open that up because he's supposed to survive, right? They want him to stay forever, right? Look, it shows you pictures of how the mummy was made. One of the things that they would do when they made the mummy is, you see that there's these 4 little jars right here? We're going to see some of them. You know what they would put in those jars?
What?
They would take out the heart and put it in a jar, and then the lungs in another jar, and then the stomach in another jar. It was kind of gross, but they wanted to make sure that those parts remain. So they would save them in jars, and then they would cover the body with salt and dry out the body, and then they would wrap it up. And that took about 3 months. Okay, so that's kind of cool or gross, but that's what they did. So let's see some of these jars. 1 second. Let me turn around.
I think
here.
I
see these
think
jars?
I think my father told us that they'll take the brain out from the nose.
Yes, and they would throw it to the fish. They didn't think the brain was important. They thought that we think with our heart. So the Egyptians were very smart in some things and not so smart in a lot of other things. So they just didn't know what the brain does, right? They just like, I don't know, it's just a piece of meat in the head. Let's take it out. All right. Wow, look at this royal woman's mummy. It's all gold, covered in gold, and lots of pictures. Do you see a woman with wings standing there? It's a little hard to see, these wings here.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's the goddess Isis. There she is again. Right? Isis. She was like the sorceress goddess. Now I'll show you a few other fun things. Look at all of these pictures. Like you said, it's like Nana said, it's a newspaper. all these pictures. What are they for? Why would they write all of this? Oh, there's a cow. Why would they write all of this on a tomb, on a mummy?
I don't know.
Who is gonna read it? That's the real question. That's the question. So let's think about that. Inside the tomb, look, they would put all these little statues and pictures and all kinds of neat stuff. I want to take you to some papyrus because we're going to talk about mythology. Let's take a look, and then we're going to tell you who's meant to read this. 1 second. Here we go. Here's this is the Osiris, who is the god of the dead, of the underworld. And so he's wrapped up like a mummy, and his face is actually green. How do we know his face was green? Let me show you. There's a picture here. Here we go. You see this little picture? I'm going to click on it, and it's going to open up. And this is called the Book of the Dead. And look at that. You see Osiris sitting there on the throne and on the right? This is the god of the underworld, the god of the dead. That's cool, right? So he's a mummy, and here's all kinds of Egyptian gods doing different things. So here's the dog. Here's the dog. You see the dog face? Now the dog face is very important. We hear about the dog in the 10 Makot. Do you remember hearing anything about dogs in the 10 Makot?
Oh yeah, that the dog ate the.
Oh, that's Chad Gadya. That's in Chad Gadya.
No,
not he ate the cat.
No, not that. I heard this in the Gada that the dog ate the alien that some woman made.
Oh, that's in Machabar.
Oh.
What?
Machabar is the Taimani summary of the Haggadah for kids.
Wow.
They summarize the Haggadah at the beginning so that the kids, if they fall asleep, they've at least heard it. And
thank you. I want to look into that. I never heard of that.
I also know part of it. Something.
That is so cool. I'm going to ask. My sister married Yemenite, so I can ask her husband. I wonder if they do that. Thank you, Machaba. I wrote that down, so I'm going to look that up. Wow, really nice. So, but the dog in Makat Bechorot in Makat Bechorot, all of the dogs were quiet. They were all very, very quiet. And that's important because when Makat Bechorot, when many people are dying, so the dogs would be going, oh, they would be making a lot of noise. And all of the dogs were so quiet. So the Egyptians thought that Anubis is the god who controls who lives and who dies. That's what they believed. That's why they have Anubis in the Book of the Dead, to show the person who died how to go into the underworld and how to live forever. So if all the dogs are quiet when people are dying, then people go, wait a minute, who really controls life and death? Who really decides who lives and who dies? It can't be Anubis, the dog god, because he's so quiet. So it's telling the Egyptians that Anubis isn't real. So that's something really cool. All of this has to do with mythology. But I want to take you to the pyramids and show you something important about one of the most important gods of ancient Egypt, whose name is Horus. Horus, or the Egyptians called him Ho, but the Greeks added us at the end because the Greeks like to call things like that. So they called him Horus. And then came Americans who can't say Ho, so they call him Horus. It's really Ho. But everyone calls him Horus, so we're just going to call him Horus. That's this guy on the right here. And he's really cool because he has to do with Pharaoh. So let's end this with this story. I want to show you Horus, just a moment. Okay, I already was here. Just 1 second. Where is he? Oh, it's fine. Here, I'm gonna show him. I'm gonna show him to you in just a moment. Here we go. I'm looking for the Zoom window. I lost it for a second. Okay, here we go. So this is Horus, the Avenger. Can you tell, first of all, what do you notice about him that we learned already?
An up-down crown.
He has the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, right? What else? What animal is he?
The white one looks like a pigeon.
What? Yeah. Yeah. What is he? What bird? What animal?
A pigeon.
Almost. He is a bird, but he's the fastest bird in Egypt. It's called a falcon. In Hebrew, baz. It's a falcon. So it's the fastest bird in the sky. It's kind of like an eagle, but they didn't have eagles like that in Egypt. So it's the falcon. Now, so they looked at this as the sky god, Horus, and Horus the Avenger is in the Egyptian mythology, the Egyptian, you can say make-believe stories. That's what it really is. But in the Egyptian stories, this is the god who was able to control the world of the living and the world of the dead, both worlds. So he's like Pharaoh, because Pharaoh also rules two different places, Upper and Lower Egypt. So this statue of Horus, who looks like a falcon.
Upper and lower.
Very good. Very good. Even more than that, let me see if I can take you, because we're going to go to the pyramids now. So I want to just take you to 1 second. Okay, here we go. So we're going to go to the pyramids, but I wanted you to see that there is a palace here, the Temple of Horus in Edfu. Let's go in, and I want you to see Horus, and then we'll talk about why he's so important. And here's a really cute surprise. Okay, let's move in. Boom. This is the Temple of Horus in Edfu. Look at all these pictures of people on the top, pharaohs and Egyptian gods and all that stuff. And here is the two statues, guardians of Horus. You see? Now, the statue of Horus, what's really cool is that the first pharaohs actually weren't called Pharaoh. They had a different name. They called them Horus. The first pharaohs were called Horus. So, for example, Ramses is called Pharaoh Ramses, or there's Pharaoh Tutankhamun. This was Horus Nemes, the first king, or Horus Khufu. They didn't call him Pharaoh. They called him Horus, because Horus rules two worlds and Pharaoh rules two lands. So they saw that Horus and Pharaoh are like the same thing. What?
This was taken with Corona.
What?
I was just explaining to her that this picture was taken with Corona.
Yeah, it says. How did you know that? I'm impressed.
Everybody's wearing masks.
Very good. Very good. I'm impressed. I didn't even notice that because I noticed on the bottom it says it was captured in January 2021. So I know that this is, but then, right, he's wearing a mask. That's so good. I'm impressed. I did not notice that. So yeah, they're wearing masks. Right, there they are, wearing masks. Here, look, this girl's smiling at us. She's wearing a mask. Okay. So let's go. What's going to end? I want to.
Pieces.
What?
It's broken into pieces.
Well, that's because the camera moved around. Yeah, you get these funny things so much sometimes. So here's the pyramids. We're going to end with the pyramids. Let's jump in to look at them up close. Let's find a good view here. Boom. See the pyramid?
Yeah.
So these are the Great Pyramids of Khufu, but there's other pyramids too. There's smaller pyramids all around. See, there's one over here. It's a little bit tiny, right? They have a lot of pyramids. There's also a Sphinx. You know the Great Sphinx? I think we can actually see it. You want to go to see the Sphinx?
Okay, I just have a question.
Sure.
Did somebody ever go inside the pyramids?
Yeah, of course. We know exactly what's inside them. We even found the things that were buried there. What they had inside there was a mummy buried deep, deep, deep down. And there's an entrance to where people would come and they would bring gifts to pray to the Pharaoh. And behind a wall that you couldn't go through were the treasures, all these different treasures. They also found a ship, not a real ship, a real ship, a wooden ship that belonged to the Pharaoh. Where is the, I'm looking for.
Another question. How did they know that all the trees and golds and stuff were behind the wall that you can't go through it? So you can't go
Well, the thing is that because there were, for thousands of years, there were thieves who already knew that they had to look for treasure. So they would try to break in wherever they thought there might be treasure. And sometimes they got lucky and sometimes they didn't find anything. Right? Here's the Sphinx. Let's try to get a look at it. Here's the Sphinx. Wow, look at the size of that. Isn't that cool? So this is the Sphinx. We've met Pharaoh. We've seen the pyramids, which were built by Egyptians who were paid with bread and beer to build the pyramids for the pharaohs. And we've just begun to see how important Pharaoh was for Egyptians, that they believe that he controls all of Egypt and all of the Nile, and he's like the god Horus who controls both worlds. So the Pharaoh is very important.
Another question.
Yeah,
and then
of course.
with all of them, of course, they saw that he doesn't really.
Right, because the first two Makot taught him he doesn't control the Nile. Dam, Tzfardea, right? Then Kinim, Arov, he doesn't control animals. Dever, Shchin, he doesn't control diseases. And then Barad and Arbe, he doesn't control the sky. And Choshech, he doesn't control the world day and night. And finally, Bechorot, he doesn't control life and death. So all of the Makot teach him, Paro, that he doesn't really control the world. And he learned that lesson. And also the Mitzrim learned that lesson.
Another question.
Yes, but we're already done. So now you can ask any questions. We're going to wrap up. Yeah.
Did they have blankets?
Probably, though it's very hot in Egypt. So they probably didn't need blankets like we have. But yeah, I'm sure they had blankets. That's a great question. I've never been asked that before. They also had toys. We definitely know that because they buried their toys with them. They also had games. Like there's a game called Senet. And there's some other games too. At least I know at least 2 different Egyptian games. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we need to end right now, but it's been fun. I'm really glad that you joined us, Elinor and Renana. I hope, yeah, we're having so much fun that I went way over time. I thought we were having a great time.
Hi.
Hi, you're Aviva?
Yeah, I am.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too. That was a great tour. And I mean, we're the only ones, so I'm worried that you're not going to do more kids tours, but I think you should.
Oh,
Because
I
it was
definitely, I intend to do this once a month.
great. So we're going to sign up for your next one
Mm-hmm.
And for
and tell our
the one
friends.
after that, and the one after that, and the one
Sure.
after that.
There's lots of
So I do them in Hebrew and in English. I do two separate ones. This was the pilot, the first time I've done it. I usually do the tours in the museum, right?
Oh.
So the next one, the Hebrew one, is going to be about Greece, ancient Greek. Nothing to do with
Okay.
Hanukkah, it's just the topic they wanted, mythology, Greece. Maybe I'll do the same one in English. I'll just do it in English. So pick one, you know, but I'm going to be advertising.
Okay, if you do different ones, it's probably better for us because then
Could be. No, it could be. I can play around with it. I just thought Pesach, you know, Egypt makes sense for Pesach. You know, something
Right.
to talk about in the Seder, but absolutely.
The Romans might make sense for Lag BaOmer.
Yeah, maybe I'll do something about the Romans. That can be really nice. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. Let me write that down. So maybe I'll do the kids who participated on the Hebrew requested Greece. So I can do Greek for the Hebrew, and then in the English, I'll do the Romans.
Okay.
I'm upside down.
Or
No,
the Bible.
Egypt is up. No, Egypt is upside down. Now we're back.